Let the battle of mid commence. What is going on, everybody? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be going on a deep dive into the 2023 Washington Commanders. Now, this is a team that I'm notorious for defending very much, but the more I dig deep, which is why I do this series, the more I unfortunately am not falling in love. And of course, everything's subject to change, and then things could happen, but that's what this video is for. That's what the series is for. I know the series doesn't get very much traction, if any, and honestly, it is producing much more negative returns, but that's in the short run. I want to be able to understand your rosters because when I do mock drafts, I want to be able to straight up understand the depth of your roster and be able to understand where those weak points are so that when I do make mock drafts for you guys, they were even better informed than anybody else who's making them. So let's get right into the video. We're going to be breaking down the depth chart of both the offense and the defense, and then we are also going to go into a records prediction. Let's jump right into this. Starting out with the offense. If you guys are new to the series, I go skill positions to line, then line to skill positions for defense. So hopping right into this, the quarterback is Sam Howell. I love Sam. He was my number 2 quarterback, kind of like he was up there. He was tied 1 with Malik Willis. He graded out as my number 1 QB. And I still think that he definitely can have a really damn good year. Antonio Gibson as well as Brian Robinson are a very nice 1-2 duo there in the backfield as well. You have some good running backs in that group. I do like your running back core quite a bit. Wide receiver wise, you have a very good group. You got Terry McLaurin there. You have Curtis Samuel there. You have Jahan Dotson. That's a very, very good receiving crew. Curtis Samuel hasn't really been that special, but I definitely think Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin have been absolutely awesome. Looking at the offensive line, you start out with Charles Leno. He's somebody that is getting much older. 2 years ago, he was an awesome addition, but age catches up to you, especially in a division where you have Micah Parsons, and now you have the Eagles edge rushing group, and you have all of that. It certainly does start to feel like a little bit of a weak point. Chris Paul, pretty sure, I'm trying to remember where he's from. I think it might have been Tulsa. Regardless, doesn't really matter. I think it was Tulsa. Don't really think that he's going to be that special of a starter for you. That's just my personal opinion. I don't really think he's going to be a high-end starter. Nick Gates is solid, but nothing special. Sam Cosmi, I really loved him at right tackle, but, moving him to right guard doesn't seem to be much of a downgrade. And then Andrew Wiley is a solid player, but to me, I feel like this team a year, 2 years ago had a much more consistent offensive line. I love Chase Rouillet in there. I miss Brandon Scherf when he was actually good. And just overall, to me, it feels like a little bit of downgrade. Of course, I forget to talk about the tight end. I feel like that's a big letdown. A lot of y'all love Logan Thomas. I just don't think that he's one of those premier tight ends. I think he's a solid tight end too with, flex one upside, but that is a bit of a stretch. But then again, you got Alex Armah there as well. Notable backups. We already talked about Antonio Gibson. Luckily, at right tackle, you do have Cornelius Lucas, who did have, a pretty big year one of those years a couple ago. And, it's good depth, but it's another guy who's getting up there in age. De'Ami Brown, miss him. He obviously has a connection with Sam Howell there back at the UNC. Ricky Stromberg was a selection this year who could take a step up. And then you have Jacoby Brissett to be a potential starter in case Sam was not doing too well. B- is a little bit of a rough grade, but when I start looking at it, there's just some key positions that are very underwhelming. I think the modern NFL looks at tight ends very heavily. And even though, you look at the draft history and not many tight ends go high, I think that there's a significant portion that are going on day 2 because teams realize that they have a huge impact. They just might not, unless you're a top 5 tight end, be the focal point of the offense. So I think Logan Thomas being there certainly is, to me, I know, again, a lot of y'all love him, is a little bit of an issue for me. But I think your running back core is fine. I do like them. I don't think it's one of the best in the NFL. Sam Howell's unproven. He had some good reps last year. And again, I'm one of his biggest fans. So, I've been able to stick my neck out there for him. But overall, I'm just a little bit worried. I think the offense is fine. It's just nothing that's blowing my socks off. There's not many rookies who are going to be playing this year. So Ricky Stromberg is one of those dudes who could probably fill in case of an injury because O-line always gets injured. So, it is what it is. Sam Howell, I do think will take a step up this year. And then I think De'Ami Brown has that chemistry. So could end up being a very nice addition. Now, looking at the defense, I'm just going to say this right off the bat. I usually like to go defensive line out. I'm just going to jump straight towards the biggest issue, the elephant in the room. This is one of those defenses that I've been praising, saying like there's almost nothing wrong with it for a very long time. I absolutely adored this defense. I started looking, and you can see down at the notable backups, it doesn't go to the bottom of the screen. I usually pick about 5 backups. That's what it fits. And most of the time, teams have 5 really solid backups. There are some teams in there that have a little bit better depth than that. But, for the most part, 5 is certainly good enough. I was stretching after 2. I'm just going to be honest. I was stretching. And that's a huge issue for me. And you're going to see in the record, you're going to be like, oh my God. But I really have to emphasize that because you need the best abilities availability. And there's been a lot of issues, especially given the fact that Chase Young is potentially going to be moved, that you just don't have what it takes to withstand the attrition of a season. And I think that you guys are preparing for that. Regardless, looking at the defense, you start out with that line, and it's incredible on paper. And Sweat, Young, Payne, and Allen, like all of them, incredible players. Of course, Young has not been healthy, so that's been the big issue with him. But on paper, God tier defensive line. I love it. When you look at the linebackers, Jamin Davis, former first-round pick. There's a lot of former first-round picks here. Cody Barton. I love Cody Barton. Don't really think that he is exactly a top-tier starting linebacker, especially in a division where you have guys who have a crazy explosive ability. You have, I was about to say Miles Sanders, but he's over there in Carolina. But I'm talking about Saquon Barkley. I'm talking about Tony Pollard. I'm talking about DeAndre Swift. You need these rangy linebackers, and luckily you have Jamin Davis. But, Jamin hasn't even taken that full step up. I'm hoping that he does that this year. Safety-wise, you got Cam Curl and Derek Forrest. I think those guys are perfectly fine. I like Cam Curl quite a bit. Then nickelback is, I believe, your second-round selection, Quay Martin. And I really like Quay. So happy about that one. Then you got your corners, Fuller and Forbes. Again, not bad at all. You look at this on paper, you're like, yeah, this is a solid B-plus defense. The moment you start digging, that's when shit hits the fan. And I hate to say that because, one, I really do want you guys to succeed. I, for some reason, really like the Commanders. But 2, I just know injuries are going to happen, and I hate factoring that in because I don't want people to get hurt. Straight up, I just don't. But when you do look at the backups, you got Fedarian Mathis, who was a bust of a second-round pick. I gave that pick an F last year, or a little bit over a year ago. You're looking at the defense. You're paying these guys millions, like top dollar, and as they should. So why would you invest a second-round pick in it? I think y'all were just scared that you're going to lose Daron Payne or Jared Allen. And you impulse bought somebody who isn't that good, which is really unfortunate. But you got Benjamin St. Juste in there as well that a lot of people really do love. Hopefully Emmanuel Forbes is able to stay healthy at 166. That's just really tough. I think he got up to 170, but he's 6'1". This guy, he was my number 2 graded corner. He's incredibly talented. It's just, it's a little bit tough. Then you have KJ Henry, who's probably going to start at right defensive end, especially given Chase Young's injury history. And then you have, I think it's just Jonathan Ridgeway. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. There at nose tackle, who was formerly of Dallas. So he wasn't even able to stick to a team that was looking for somebody to be on their nose, which they drafted in the first round this last year. So very, very, very worried. I do think Jatavius Quay Martin is going to be the rookie of the year. Forbes, I'm a little bit concerned about health, but I also know that as nickelback is going to be pretty damn solid at getting those tackles, potentially getting those blitz packages. So I think he's just going to have a bigger role. Of course, I do think Forbes, as the pick 6 specialist himself, definitely could be in that sleeper category. But then Jamin Davis, I'm hoping, takes that big step up. Again, the defensive line on paper is God tier. Don't really need to say much about that. The secondary is great. But when it comes to depth, this team has absolutely none. And again, this NFL is a war of attrition. And just having good starters is not good enough anymore. That's why when I see blown second-round picks like Fedarian Mathis, that really hits me hard because that could have been used for an extra linebacker. That could have been used for an extra edge rusher. I know we have KJ Henry, but you need more than that. And the depth was not just not notable. It was honestly dishonorable to say that they were backups in the NFL. I know a lot of guys who go undrafted who are better than the second level players on this team. So it's going to hurt, but let's talk about it. I think Arizona is just an absolute shit show. I think Kyler Murray, I'm projecting him to come back at week 14. He is potentially coming back week 10. Doesn't matter in this case. So y'all are going to be going to Arizona, or you guys are going to be taking Arizona at home. I think that, again, they're pretty much in shambles at the moment. They're rebuilding very well. They had a very solid day 1 and 2 of the draft, but regardless, still, you're going to Denver, and I think that I actually have been giving Denver too little credit. Personally, I think I've been giving Denver a little too much hate because I just actually did it last night, or building the slides last night, and man, I mean, they have a much better team than what I thought about, and I don't give them enough credit. So luckily, I did that here. They have a really damn good secondary, and that's going to match up against the receiving core so well. They have a solid offensive line. Nothing special, but they have definitely some guys who can hold it off there. Russell Wilson's used to scrambling anyways. I think even with the turmoil of having a new regime in there, a new ownership, they're definitely still going to be perfectly fine. Buffalo is Buffalo. Philadelphia, I mean, again, I had them, I think, go 14-3. Maybe 15-2. I think last year I projected them 15-2 as well, but I think Philadelphia, they're in that win now mode. Chicago, I think, is still piecing it together. The offensive line is certainly getting a lot better for them, and that's a great thing. But I also think that this team matches up pretty well to that. You have really good, very fast defenders, and I think that's great for defending against Justin Fields. I think the Bears' defense is a little bit lackluster, and that could be a major advantage for someone like Sam Howell to be able to pick them apart. So I think you start off the year 2-3, and that's a really solid start. You actually start at 3-3. You go to Atlanta, and actually, I think that I might have swapped that game, but we'll see in the long run. This might be a 3-14 record. Regardless, I think Atlanta's a really damn good team. I'm debating on switching it back. For the sake of this video, let's be pessimistic and say that's a loss. And that's a toss-up game for sure. Atlanta's a very, very talented squad. They just, I don't believe in their quarterback, not nearly as much as Sam Howell. I do think that's a game that could be a coin toss. So I'm going to leave it as is with the W, but we could, of course, be pessimistic there. Just keep that in mind. Going to New York, they're a very talented franchise. They just, I think they really lack the oomph, and especially in terms of their wide receivers. They kind of have all the same. They don't really have someone who could be a dominant one. Philadelphia, I already talked about them. At New England, it's getting later in the year, colder. Bill Belichick loves to destroy quarterbacks with low experience, so definitely think that's going to be a big factor there. Seattle, don't think I need to explain that very much, especially given the fact that you don't have very much behind your starters. I think attrition is going to start setting in, and when you have a team with two really good running backs pounding you and and having a really good receiving core, I think that there's just Seattle is going to be a dominant squad. They're probably going to be the next division I do. I already have all the slides ready, but they're really good. Then you have New York. So I had them splitting because it is in division. I do think that New York, they definitely are lacking some pieces. So it definitely is a little bit more of an easy thing to say. I'm going to split it. Dallas, Dallas is, you're tough. You're at AT&T. It's very difficult for a team to be able to compete with a roster like that. They're very talented, except for probably in the linebacking room. Miami, they're a super loaded roster on a very QB-friendly system. I think that regardless, they're going to win. Then Los Angeles, I got to give LA a win here or there. And LA does have some solid pieces on offense. I think their defense is kind of atrocious, but that star power, especially on the inside, I think if you line up Aaron Donald on Chris Paul, it's game over. And it's kind of sad, but that's kind of the X factor here. And we're talking about arguably one of the best players of all time. So, it is, luckily they have that one star power that really does matter. Then you have New York. I don't think I need to explain that very much. I do believe in them a lot. San Fran, then next, I have Brock Purdy being back, especially by that time. Some people think he'll be back week 2. I'm like, let's hold the horses here. And then going back to Dallas could be a win right there. Honestly, I think Dallas might rest their starters at that point, so we might just flip that to a W and keep the 4-13 or even 5-12 record. But overall, just not great. It's really not great, unfortunately. I think you guys are going to definitely be one of the lower teams. It's the depth issue. It really is, because especially during the latter part of the year, you're just not going to get the traction that you need. But that is going to be the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys on the far side.